Good day to you, and welcome back to the podcast Catch It, A New Perception. My name is Ketuk. I think today about different things, like some particular terminology. Early on in this podcast, in the first season, one of the first few episodes, we talked a little bit about terminology, and I think about terminology and a couple of words specifically that I was speaking with a group of people about recently. And a few of us were sitting around sharing some coffee and having some words about terminology like seldom and interested. What is seldom? And I remember sharing some of this that day in that circle. And we sit in these sacred circles and we really offer a piece of ourselves when we're having this conversation. There was maybe about a dozen of us in this particular sacred circle. And it was interesting because the word seldom. What I was asking was, what does it mean? And use a context like you're obsessing about something, can't seem to get it off your mind. And someone will say, "Oh, were you obsessing about that?" And you'll be like, "Oh, no, I was seldom thinking about it," because you only thought about it probably once yesterday and once the day before. So you've been seldom thinking about it because you have been obsessing about it every day, all day long. And then a few months later, that same person might make an approach to you and they'll say, "Well, remember what we were talking about? And you're really obsessing about this situation. Are you still obsessing about it?" Seldom. Maybe once a week. I really don't think about it much. So there's not much of an obsession, just a thought periodically here and there. So seldom. And then a few years down the road, you're meeting with this friend for a cup of coffee and the subject is brought up again. And they ask you, "Have you been obsessing about it? Do you even think about it?" And I seldom think about it. There's no obsession anymore. Maybe once a month. Maybe not even that. Seldom. And you don't even look back and realize that you were using the word seldom for once a day, and now you're using the word seldom for once a month, once every other month, once every few months. The word seldom. It's like everything else. It's very subjective. We use it in a certain context and someone hears it and they think they know what you're talking about. And the reason I say that is because you may be talking about once a day. You might be talking about once a month. You might be talking about, I haven't thought about it much in the last couple of years, I guess. Pretty seldom. They may interpret what you mean by seldom much differently. And we do this with terminology. We have certain terminology and we want to believe that other people are going to think like we do. Interested. And this is, again, very interesting terminology. I use the word interesting to mean a broad span of things. Sometimes it may be a negative connotation versus sometimes it may be a positive connotation. And often when I use the word interesting, it's very middle of the road. Like, I've watched people judge this. I don't really want to. I've watched people condemn this. I don't really want to. It's interesting. So that's my personal terminology with the word interesting. And I think that when we use the term interested, seldom interested in what you were obsessing about, or seldom thinking about what it was that you are interested in. I think the best way to change that interest that we obsessed about, no matter what it was, I think the best way to change that is to find new interest. So someone might be obsessed about something or can't quit thinking about something that's really negative in their life, whether it's a past relationship that was very toxic, or whether it was some form of maybe getting loaded and it wasn't fitting into their life anymore. Whatever these interests were, they're obsessing about going back to school and not taking any action towards it, so therefore the obsession should leave or the action should be taken. I believe one or the other. Well, when it comes to some of these other things that we need to leave behind us, it may be time to find new interest. If we're not going to go to school and further our education, do we want to find what we could be interested in to do for a period of time in our lives, maybe the rest of our lives? Maybe we don't look at it like that. Maybe it's just going to be for a period of time. And then we start on a new career path, and we didn't know it was going to be a career. And then we have less interest in the idea of going to school because it appears that this could be a career path. Or we were obsessing about this relationship, or we keep thinking about this person that was really toxic in our life, and we don't really need them in our life. So how do we change that interest in that subject? Well, find different interest. Maybe it's time to get involved in a hobby. Maybe it's time to do more reading. Maybe it's time to get outside and do things in nature. Maybe it's time to be able to do something that you've never done before. Maybe it's time to do some internal work. Maybe a different interest would be yoga or meditation, a spiritual practice of some sort. Maybe that would be a different interest than interest in getting loaded, whether that's drugs or drinking, or whether that's a person that is not healthy, or whether that's the idea of obsessing about school when you know you're not going to further your education. What is it that you can do to find new interest, to lose the interest in other things? We find that we seldom have interest in getting loaded. We seldom have interest in that toxic relationship. We seldom have interest in furthering our education because we found interest in the outdoors. We found an interest in yoga. We found an interest in meditation. We found an interest in a new group of people. We have new friends. We are into botany. We're going to figure out what plants can do in the world for us. We're going to figure out what kind of plant medicine is good for us. We're going to do something different and find a new interest to lose interest in the old, whatever that is. I think that things like this are really important. I think that when we find a new interest, we can lose the interest we once had. It will continue to shrink. It will continue to dissipate. All of that is really healthy when the interest that we had is not good for us, especially if it's to the point of obsession. The obsession of the mind takes us down that rabbit hole, whether it's that toxic relationship, whether it's getting loaded on booze or other chemicals that are not good for us. Any of those things, because all of those things take us away from a relationship with ourselves, a relationship with the Creator, and a relationship with other people. So if we get interested in any of those subjects, a relationship with the Creator, a relationship with ourselves, or with other people, we could find interest in those things. Now, for some of us, when we find that interest in the Creator and we walk on a spiritual path towards that relationship, to build that relationship with the universe, with nature, with that mystery, whatever it is that you call that power, that is that deities to some people, or to that energy, and you work on that relationship, that then repairs the relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others, because it's not about being selfish. It's about self-care. What we need, I believe, in this world is about self-care. So how do we seldom have interest in things we used to do? If you look at examples in your life, things that you were really into, things, and it could have been gaming, it could have been any number of things. It could have been, drinking, doing drugs, it could have been a bad relationship, it could have been anything that you were really into and you're just not into it anymore. What did you do differently? Do you realize, are you conscious of the fact that you found a different interest? Are you aware that you could do that again with something new? It's really interesting. I will share this because I'm around some people periodically who no longer participate in things they used to participate in. And it's really interesting how the last thing that they participated in was the most difficult to get away from. And I think it's because it's most recent. So if you struggle with the idea of what some people will refer to as an addiction, some people might call it an obsession, some people could call it many different things. If you struggle with any of those things, you may need to find a focus that's different, or a new interest, if you will. Become interested in other things and lose interest in what you were once doing. And I think that all of that allows us to be able to get to know ourselves better. I think that it will change the relationship with the people around us when they see that we're no longer caught up in what we were caught up in that created selfishness in our lives. And then we also realize we have this connection to this great spirit, to this energy, to the Creator that we did not once have. It continues to change. And my hope is that each one of you will be able to listen to another episode of this podcast. If you haven't yet, I hope that you subscribe. I hope that you can share it with other people and ask them to subscribe. And you may listen to an episode or two and think, I don't get much out of this. And then you listen to one and you're like, oh yes, that's it. That is our hope. Our hope is that one day these episodes will touch people that need them to be able to make changes in their life that are necessary for them to be able to develop the relationship that they need with the people around them. The relationship with themselves and their relationship with the Creator. Looking forward to next time. Live in harmony with and use the bounty of the land to bring kindness to the world.